Welcome to the first season of the Is the Planet Doomed podcast. This is a project produced by the students of a course with the same name in the Department of Geography at Colgate University. By unpacking some of the world's most pressing and complex problems, the episodes in this podcast help answer the question, well, are we doomed? In this episode, Sandro Conte shows how poor residents of Rio de Janeiro are caught between police and local drug gangs.
On April 2nd, 2015, Teresina de Jesus' life was shattered to pieces. She woke up and began her day as usual in the Complexo do Alemão, a poor slum neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. She opened the front door to see her son, Eduardo, lying dead on the ground. Eduardo was only 10 years old. He had been suddenly shot and killed by a policeman in a matter of seconds.
I looked back. First, I saw a police unit. There was a military policeman in the front. I grabbed his vest and said, "You killed my son." He said, "I can easily kill you, like I did your son. I killed a gangster's boy."
That was Teresina recounting the horrific moments which followed her son's death. The policeman thought Eduardo was working for drug traffickers. This misjudgment resulted in the murder of an innocent child. Sadly, in Brazil's slums, or favelas as they're called here, this is an all-too-common event. Favela residents are often caught in the crossfire of the raging wars between local drug gangs and the police. Eduardo's murder is one of many that show how this violence can directly impact the favela community. Brendo Jose do Nascimento, another young favela occupant, fears for his life. He is frightened by the first-hand exposure to violence and lack of security in favelas.
There's no protection, not from the police, least of all from the drug dealers. No one feels safe here.
Violence between drug cartels and the police in Brazilian favelas can be traced back through the favela's complex history. Drug cartels exploited the poverty and neglect cast upon these slums, where their trafficking operations could run undetected. The police intervened in an effort to counteract the authority of drug cartels, resulting in endless confrontations and bloodbaths. To this day, the lives of favela inhabitants are defined by the violence that they are exposed to on a daily basis. They are forced to make particular decisions to avoid getting trapped in the crossfire.
Sometimes we couldn't work out because gangsters blocked the favela. We couldn't go outside because of the gunfights, and we had to miss school lessons.
That statement came from Rafaela Silva, a Brazilian judo specialist who grew up in the City of God, an infamous favela in Rio de Janeiro. Rafaela is an Olympic gold medalist, which just goes to show how the conflict affects even the most distinguished favela occupants. There are a select few, such as Rafaela, who are able to escape the violence at some point during their lifetime. Such people are fortunate enough to be able to afford to move somewhere else and have the opportunity to do so. The vast majority of favela dwellers, however, lack the means to leave. The result is a lifetime confined within a realm of deadly interactions between drug cartels and the police. Racism in the favelas escalates the violence. Luis Suarez, Undersecretary for National Security in Brazil, admits that police target potential criminals in the favelas based on their skin color.
When we talk about lethal violence, when we talk about death, there is this terrible concentration on poor black young boys.
Slavery played a huge role in the development of Rio de Janeiro. Former slaves typically resided in favela neighborhoods, viewed as outcasts within Brazilian society. This was the basis of racial inequality, which still exists in present-day Brazil. Police racism against Afro-Brazilians is common. They often just assume that every kid with dark skin is a drug trafficker. And some of those kids, like Teresina's son, end up dead. Tim Lester of Journeyman Pictures shares a frightening statistic about child mortality rates in favelas.
Children here are 8 times more likely to die violently than those in Israel or the West Bank.
As if killing rates higher than those of many wars wasn't bad enough, the undercover operations of the police in Rio have also proven disastrous. Officers will sometimes attempt to buy drugs from the traffickers to gather intel. Other officers will pose as members of drug cartels to learn about the traffickers' operations. More often than not, these policemen are compromised and cruelly murdered by the traffickers, worsening the violence. A trafficker currently serving time in prison shares a story with reporters from Journeyman Pictures. He asks that they call him L. He tells of the past experience he had with undercover police officers.
Two were police we captured at the favela. My friend tied them up and told me to kill them. One was a woman that was a double agent, and the other one was an undercover policeman who came to buy drugs from us.
Corrupt police officers pose an additional threat to members of the favela community. These officers, according to the UN's Luis Suarez, prioritize financial desires over their duties to enforce the law.
Policemen can sell weapons to criminals, weapons that will kill them, kill policemen afterwards. So this is the paradox under which we are living.
In the City of God, a drug trafficker working for the ruthless Red Command cartel agrees to meet with reporters. Known as JN, he reaffirms that drug cartels occasionally buy weapons from the police. He also voices his hatred of the corrupt policemen who stimulate violence within favelas.
They come into the favela, pick up their money, kill whoever gets in their way. They bash, kill, or do whatever they like with us.
Death counts in the favelas are worrisome. The lack of suitable government intervention allows them to remain as permanent war zones. This uncontrolled violence has disastrous consequences.
The Brazilian police only enter these slums heavily armed. 3,000 people die on the streets here every year. Thousands more are caught in the crossfire.
That was Khaled Kaziha of Off the Tracks blog. He and his crew lived in a favela referred to by locals as the Gaza Strip for 3 weeks. It is located in Mare, Rio de Janeiro. They risk their lives in a place where roughly 10 people are killed per day to get a closer look at favela warfare. Hours after their arrival, Kaziha and his crew witnessed how a shootout between the police and drug traffickers affected the surrounding community. Not only were several traffickers killed by the police, but various innocent civilians were injured as well. Kaziha encountered a 9-year-old girl named Tamara, who was wounded during the gunfight. She was hiding inside her house when a bullet fragment abruptly traveled through the wall and into her shoulder. Kaziha spoke with Tamara's aunt, who was quick to point out how the injury was undeniably inflicted by the police.
She's telling me that she's certain it was the police that fired into this house. The drug traffickers were downstairs firing at the police, and the police were returning fire from this direction.
These types of confrontations occur on a daily basis in the favelas, as the police continually try to challenge the authority of drug cartels. Seeking to learn more about how the cartels operate in the favelas, Kaziha was invited to speak with a group of local traffickers. According to the men, the cartel's system of control in the favelas is centered upon their financial dominance in these zones of poverty. Such cartels thrive in the lawless favelas through the mainstream circulation of drugs.
They told me their guns were supplied by senior drugs bosses, who also paid them monthly salaries. Drugs, they claimed, were financing their favelas in the absence of the official government.
The question now becomes, how are we to address the murderous favelas in Brazil, where drug cartels and the police constantly clash and claim innocent lives? As the government continues to inadequately handle the situation, more and more people are suffering for an unworthy cause. And unfortunately, it looks like things are only getting worse. For Colgate University, I'm Alessandro Conte.